Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda.
And I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep.
We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey everybody, today we're talking about worms.
Your intros lately.
Amanda never quite knows what's going to come out of me. We have intro in our outline and like roughly what will be there, but she just never knows what I'm going to say. I'm a real loose cannon over here. So when I say we're going to talk about worms, what I mean is we're going to talk about worm superstitions, worm folklore, and essential worm intel that you need to know if you're going to be able to explain to your partner or significant other whether you would still love them if they were a worm, as well as some practical considerations. We've thought about this question too much so that you're prepared. A gift for you, dear listener, and a treat for us to research worms.
And we'll explain what the fuck Lindsay's talking about here in a bit.
To start, worm scientists are called wormologists. We likely will be referring to ourselves as worm scientists now, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though we're not really. We're not going to say wormologists. We're going to say worm scientists so that you know we don't mean that we're legitimate. Just that we have an accoutrement of intel on worms.
Wait a minute. We're not legitimate scientists?
Like enough to make someone else uncomfortable in a conversation, but not enough to be able to explain any real worm thing outside of what we actually know. Anyway, worms.
We are a lot of different types of scientists. We have a long resume. So let's start with the superstitions. If you step on a worm, you'll have bad luck. Also, if you kill a worm, you're killing your good luck.
Aggressive.
So, like, if you fish with worms, you're fucked.
Shit.
Yeah.
Oh, you're like feeding your good luck to the fish?
Yeah, and then you're killing everything.
Fuck, man. Fuck.
Yeah. Don't recommend. I can't fish. It makes me too sad. I can't even kill the worm.
I don't have the patience to do it. I will pick up worms when it's raining if they will die.
Okay.
If I don't move them.
Okay.
And that is very difficult. Like I do it because I'm like, they are good creatures. They do good things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them. Maybe this is someone's wife. I'll put it over here. But not like, I don't have like a love of worms myself. I'm just like, I feel bad. You're like sizzling to death on this sidewalk. You don't deserve this. Anyway.
I can't tell you the last time I saw a worm like that wasn't bought at like a Cabela's.
Well, yeah, because you don't have dirt.
No, we have like clay and it's horrible.
Of the different types of worm habitats, I don't think that's one of them.
It is not. No.
They're a real gooey creature, you know? Amanda's face was amazing. And I knew it would be. Oh, worms.
Oh, okay. Back to superstitions. If you see earthworms after rain in the fall, then you will have a mild winter. We do not, like I just mentioned, get worms, but we do get toxic toads after the rain. What does that mean?
That means you unfortunately live in Arizona. I just think that this is an interesting kind of superstition because it is more common that you will see worms after it rains. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just like really wishful thinking.
They're like, this means great.
Yeah.
That's fine. Let's talk a little bit about toothaches, kind of pivot here.
Yeah.
How does that relate to worms? So how that relates to worms, let us tell you.
I'm so sorry.
Before people understood what caused tooth pain, they thought the pain was from tooth worms.
And let's just pause there so that you can really imagine what a tooth worm might be.
Ugh.
Had you ever heard of tooth worms before our research for today?
Not tooth worms, but another creature inside people's mouths. I'll talk about in a minute.
I had never heard of this, which is strange because it was like relatively commonly held for a long time, but like,
yeah,
tooth worms.
Oh, it makes me uncomfortable.
Okay, they've had enough time to visualize. We can continue.
I just keep squirming.
I know. Real gooey creatures in your mouth.
I hate it. So toothworms were mentioned in ancient Chinese scripts from 1500 BC, as well as writings from the Roman Empire in Middle Ages. Specifically, they thought that the pain was from the worms burrowing in your teeth.
No.
Absolutely fucking not. No. Ooh. Now, I have heard, though, of maggots in people's mouths for various reasons, or like under dentures and stuff.
Another gooey creature that I don't want in my mouth.
And that makes me uncomfortable as well. Yeah.
Now, some people do eat worms. We're not going to talk about that today, but those are purposefully in your mouth. Like you put them in your mouth on purpose. That feels different.
Mm-hmm.
You have availed yourself to these gooey creatures in your mouth.
Yes.
Like an oyster.
Ugh. No. So uncomfortable. So different cultures had different ideas of what these toothworms may have looked like. In northern Germany, they thought they were red, blue, and gray. And they looked like a maggot, which, I mean, they could have been maggots. Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
In England, they thought it looked like an eel. And how to fix toothworms, they believed that slathering honey on the tooth would help, or carrying a bag of teeth. And the teeth were taken from corpses and or horses.
Corpse teeth.
That'll rid your mouth of toothworms.
Yeah.
Was it the teeth that we were talking about that people would throw on their roofs too in one of our episodes forever ago?
If we did, I blocked that out.
And we were super confused why carrying, a bag of teeth would help anything. So we weren't sure if they would carry it with them, or perhaps they would put the teeth in their mouth to be like a distraction.
Like a decoy tooth.
Like, go after these teeth instead of my teeth that are attached. Who could fucking know?
I would love to see data on how many people felt relief from their toothaches by carrying a bag of loose teeth.
I'm sure the numbers were not great.
I'm sure that more people would report success than you would think. That is completely unrelated. It's simply a coincidence, but maybe it's also because they're not eating as much stuff that fucks up their teeth, or I don't know.
I think they're just distracted trying to obtain these teeth.
I mean,
they're not focusing on the pain.
Yeah, they're focusing on the horrors that are required to acquire corpse or horse teeth.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it's corpse horse teeth, not live horse teeth. That's fucking awful.
I would assume corpse of everything. I'm just gonna hope it was all corpse.
Corpse teeth.
Corpse teeth.
That's the name of our metal band.
Hey, we're awesome. Now, another way to help with your toothworms is to crush up ladybugs into a juice and then put that juice onto your tooth. That makes me uncomfortable saying as well.
Bug juice.
No.
Also, those poor ladybugs. Ladybugs are thought to be lucky, so that can't be good luck.
Mm-mm. We do have ladybugs here sometimes. I see them near our pool.
Good.
I'm included.
Part of it. Look, we have a creature that doesn't burn to death immediately or sting people and kill them.
Yeah. So another way to help with your pain of your toothworms is using smoke from various herbs. Smoke them out.
And it was medicinal herbs, but toothworms really fucks you up.
I hate it.
So in terms of ideas that people have about worms, one of the really common myths about worming is that people think that if you cut a worm in half, you'll get two worms. Some worms can reproduce by being cut in half, but not all. And in some instances, worms that could theoretically cut in half and be two worms, rather than regenerating an entire body, they might just regenerate their tail. So then it's just two tails, so it starves to death because it doesn't have a mouth.
Oh.
Alternatively, it could have two mouths.
Weird.
The horrors. And also, even if you are a worm or encounter a worm that could be cut in half, it would need to have a certain amount of segments to not die.
Mm-hmm.
And if the worm isn't in a good habitat, it's in rocks in Arizona, or if it's not a very healthy worm, it's less likely to survive. So the more segments and the more happy life it has, the more likelihood of survival. But I also just feel don't cut worms in half.
Yeah, that's mean. So speaking of, worm life, a worm's life expectancy depends on the type of worm, and it can range from just a few years to hundreds of years.
That's an old fucking worm.
For example, The Riftia pachytilla, aka giant tube worms, can live up to 300 years. By the way, this type of worm is one of the fastest growing creatures on the planet. It can grow to almost 3 feet in about 18 months. Unsettling. The largest one that scientists are aware of is 6.6 feet.
That's a big fucking worm.
How many 12-year-old boys is that?
1 moment. Let me do that math. That's 1.5 roughly 12-year-old boys.
Oh, is that all? Per the Guinness Book of World Records, the largest earthworm was found in South Africa, and it was found in 1967 and was 21 feet long with a diameter of about 0.8 of an inch. In case you're wondering, that's over 5 12-year-old boys. Now, worms generally do not like bright lights. That's why they're typically in the ground or in the dirt. Most non-water worms can survive underwater for a couple of weeks. Also, just because I know this, and now everyone else has to too, because we have to relate it to Arizona, right? A scorpion can live in your pool for around 2 days. So like that's another fear when you go swimming is you have to make sure you're not stepping on a scorpion.
It didn't even occur to me that there would be scorpions in your pool.
Not in my pool.
Like, I would be like, oh, you could jump into a pool to save yourself from a scorpion.
Nope. You're never safe from a scorpion here.
Jesus fucking Christ. Oh my God. Could you imagine encountering a scorpion in your shower? You die immediately.
I was trapped in there with a scorpion spider hybrid once, remember?
I remember that. I just don't remember. I remember the spider, not that it was a scorpion spider abomination.
That's the best way I can describe it, is a scorpion spider hybrid / demon.
A mythical beast. You mean you were trapped in your shower with a mythical beast?
Seriously, I had never seen one before, and I have not seen one since. So yes.
Perfect.
So, worms. Worms are typically non-monogamous.
This is important for later considerations.
I didn't know that or have never thought about that. Some can reproduce asexually. Others have complicated mating practices.
So you're like, this isn't scary. This isn't terrifying. You know what is? How earthworms reproduce. And I'm going to tell you about it. So, okay. If you've ever seen an earthworm, they're like the little red worms that you see in the ground all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
And places that have dirt. So there's a band kind of in the middle of them. And it's called the Slidilum. I said that wrong, but we're just going to keep going. And so it's like a little tube that exists on the center of it. So think of it like a belt, if you will.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So when two worms love each other.
Oh my God.
They rub together and it causes their little belt to excrete lots of mucus. And it makes a slimy tube around the two worms. Amanda's face right now is amazing. So during their little sexy wriggling time, the male worm will ejaculate sperm into the slime. And then the eggs are created in a separate segment in the lady worm and then released into egg sacs. Then that little, their little belt slime ring will slide over the egg sacs and it will collect the eggs, which are then brought up to the sperm repositories. Then the sperms will wriggle into the slime to fertilize the egg, and the little belt ring slime tube will slip off the worm.
I guarantee no one's ever thought about that, ever.
So once off the worm, that little ring slime tube will seal up into a cocoon so that the little baby worms can grow.
Great.
Which, fascinating. So also, just in case you were wondering.
Of course.
What about, we said that the worms were non-monogamous. So if the dude worm is like, I think that there's other sperm in this slime sack, he can produce more sperm to compete for the eggs. Like he can be like, we need a few extra boys in there. Let's send them in, into the slime sacks tube thing. You're welcome.
Scientific.
Worm sex scientist. Definitely not. That's probably people who actually know about worms are like, what the fuck did she just say? And I'm like, they make a slime tube out of their belt where they put their sperm and their eggs in. Then they throw the belt and slime dress off and it seals up and they make worm babies. I wriggled my fingers at Amanda many times during that. She should know that.
She sure did.
You can probably hear me creaking in my chair and wriggling my fingers.
A lot.
A real 3D sound experience. Listen with headphones for the full experience.
No, because then you'll hear our breathing and clicking and nonsense. That. Please don't.
Don't. listen to us on the worst sound quality you have.
In your car is best on the freeway.
And just assume that anything's... No, I don't think that's true. We're not... We take out a lot of stuff. We're professionals. Anyway, back to worms.
Worms. So researchers have also found that it appears worms, to a certain extent, have free will. I didn't even really know that they thought.
Mm-mm.
But in their study, they offered an attractive smell to roundworms. And they found that some would stop to investigate the smell, while others would just ignore it, just like people. Same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Exactly the same thing.
Interestingly, they offered the same smell numerous times to the worms, and sometimes it would ignore it, while others it would go to investigate the smell. There didn't seem to be a certain pattern or anything with their interactions with the scent. It was just if they wanted to.
I love that.
So let's talk about what worms eat. Typically, you'd find worms in a garden setting, right? So they'll be munching on organic matter like eggshells, fruit peels, coffee grounds, grass clippings, and stale bread. Worms eat half their body weight each day.
I don't know why I find that charming.
My sister-in-law decided that she wanted a worm farm at one point and had a little shoebox plastic container filled with worms, and she'd have to go after dinner. I have to go feed my worms, and she'd get them out from under her sink and feed the worms.
Was it like a compost thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea for composting. Immediately I went, oh, it was her ex-lover who turned into a worm that she saved.
She kept under her sink. No, I have a composter that we've been wanting to put worms in and stuff, but I think that they would just die immediately because of the heat here. And I don't want to kill them.
I am not optimistic about how they would do there. Also, where would you get them? I could go abduct worms from my yard if I really wanted to.
I could go abduct worms too, somewhere, I'm sure.
Where? From your sister-in-law's under the sink area?
I mean, if it's really funny, and Lindsay still doesn't believe me, but if you go about an hour and a half up north from me, there are trees and dirt and snow even sometimes.
I like that you're going to take an hour or two in back drive to abduct some worms.
I've driven longer for less reasons.
For less? That's fair. That's fair.
So giant tube worms, we mentioned earlier, actually don't eat anything. The bacteria in their bellies transforms sulfur into energy for them. I want to do that. I want to just not have to eat and just have energy somehow.
No, eating is sometimes fun. It's annoying to have to figure out food for every meal. I don't want that. What I really want is just to not have to make food decisions and have nutritious, good things for me that exist just there without any thought.
Or some sulfur.
And for them to also be good things that taste good.
I don't know, the sulfur thing.
Done. Delicious.
So let's move on to some worm history. The word worm comes from the Old Norse orm and Old English worm, but W-Y-R-M, which means serpent or dragon. An interesting note about worms in folklore is that some stories use the terms worm and dragon interchangeably.
I literally cannot think of two creatures that I think are further apart from one another than a little worm and a dragon.
No. I see this. And you know what's funny is I have a perfect story for this. And it's haunted me.
I am so intrigued right now. Please go on.
I want to say it was late elementary school. Some sort of folklore that we were reading, we all had to draw dragons, right? And I think I can draw pretty well, if I spend time on it. Not people ever, but other things. And I worked on my dragon for a while, and I thought it looked great. And I turned it in, and it was the first bad grade I've ever gotten in my life, because I was always a straight A student, right? Straight A's, never gotten anything below an A. And I think I got a C or something, and my heart broke.
You got a C on your dragon drawing?
And the teacher told me it looks like a worm with wings.
Were you on a curve? Okay, that does have an image of Trogdor in my head.
Yes. Yeah.
The Burninator. I can understand how one would do that, but well, first off, a dragon is to most a mythical fucking creature. You should find her and be just in case you were wondering, worms come from the word dragon, and the words were used interchangeably.
Mhm.
So when you said dragon, I thought you meant from like folklore and other cultures. I didn't know that you were so pedestrian.
But if you think of a dragon, even like a lot of the time they're kind of slithery with the big wings.
Also, you were like 9. Like, what did she expect you to do?
Yeah. I don't know. I remember this bitch's name. It is a thing.
Amanda so rarely like calls people bitches. I don't know if I've ever heard her call anyone a bitch ever, but she's like, my 3rd fucking grade teacher, let me fucking tell you. Like, she has very clearly been like holding on to this so intensely. Do you feel like a part of you healed today?
Yeah, I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna send her this.
I'm gonna find her. Okay. Well, I guess we'll do an episode on whatever happens there.
I'm gonna send her this episode, and you know what? She's gonna know for next time. Okay.
She'll regret the day she ever gave me a C.
Yeah.
I also just don't feel that I'm not a teacher. I don't understand all that, but I do feel like you don't need to give children C's in art.
It wasn't even art. It was like English.
That's even better. Like, okay, wild.
But no joke. Like, if you look, I just typed in dragon drawing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are thin little creatures with wings.
I'm gonna type in children's dragon drawing.
It's gonna be mine with a fucking C on it. Okay.
Was it like a C plus or just like a solid C?
I don't know. I just remember being really, really mad. I still am.
No. Okay. Yeah, it is basically a worm with some little spikies in the back.
Exactly. Mine had texture, okay? I wish I would have saved that. I should have. Make her get a tattoo of it.
And say, this is a fucking dragon.
Right? And from our research, too, what we saw is the depictions looked like big worms sometimes. Or like dragons.
So like when they would use worm in folklore, sometimes it was just a large worm that looked angry, and sometimes it was like a traditional dragon.
Yeah. So, and while we were researching this week, what we found is that depictions, like when they said worm, sometimes they look like just a worm, but sometimes it was a fucking dragon. So I was right.
Mm-hmm.
Older folklore used the term dragon to describe both dragons and serpents. Speaking of folklore, let's get into a couple worm stories.
I also just want to point out, what is folklore if not just vintage cryptids?
I think that's fair.
When we talk about cryptids, like we talk about like their origin story and like what they did and sightings and stuff like that. So I think that a lot of folklore, it's just like super old versions of cryptids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the Great Worm of Shannon. And it's considered an ullifist, which is the Irish word meaning great worm or fabulous beast that is used to describe several big worms. There's a ton of worm folklore, but we just chose a couple for today. Ullifists are typically believed to live in lakes or rivers. Douglas Hyde discusses the Great Worm of Shannon in his book Legends of Saints and Sinners that was published in 1915. Which one do you think the worm was?
What a fucking title. Oh, he's a sinner, baby.
For sure.
So the story explains that a druid foretold that a man was coming to Ireland to banish all snakes, dragons, and serpents. The great man is thought to be St. Patrick, who, legend has it, drove all of the venomous reptiles from England. It's an interesting note. There are not any native poisonous reptiles to Ireland. And the first venomous snake bite reported in Ireland wasn't until 2020, and it was from an imported pet snake, a puff adder to be exact.
That's wild.
Anyway, back to our story. Before St. Patrick legendarily expelled all the venomous reptiles from Ireland, the great worm was living in a pool of water near Rigna Mountains. The great worm had heard about the prophecy about St. Patrick, so he was like, I gotta get to the fucking sea. Like, let's go. So he's determined to get there. What he did was he's like burrowing in the ground and like creating a waterway by like chiseling through the earth. And one of the waterways created with that is a lake called Lake Shannon, which is why the Great Worm of Shannon. So as the great worm worked its way through the earth to get to the sea, it preyed on livestock and sometimes people. In one such instance, a group of people were on their way to confront the great worm to be like, can you stop eating our livestock and or people? And the group is led by an intoxicated piper named O'Rourke, which I feel like you need to be a little bit intoxicated to be like, hey, there's a great worm eating people. We should go yell at it. Like, I just feel like that's a bad idea. But anyway, not surprisingly, the great worm swallowed O'Rourke in a single gulp. But he did throw him up a few days later because inside of him, O'Rourke was just like rocking the fuck out on his pipes. And the great worm was like, enough of this. So he threw him up. Once O'Rourke is gone, now the picture, the great worm began to work harder to make his way to the sea because he knew about that prophecy and he had lost some time with the whole O'Rourke debacle. Now, O'Rourke got drunk again, and he was like, you know what? And another fucking thing. I'm going to go fight this worm again. So he goes to look for the worm where he had last seen him, because he doesn't really know what the worm's doing, right? He's just like, this guy is fucking causing chaos and eating people and or creatures. And so he goes to where he was, and he's not there. But he can see the waterway that he's created. He is walking along the river that the great worm had made when he encountered an enchanted eel in a hole.
Of course he did.
And then soon after this, O'Rourke too was enchanted, and he went into the hole where he continued to play his pipe. Because this guy, if he's going to do anything, he's going to get drunk and rock out on his fucking pipe. So after this, no one ever saw O'Rourke again. But they heard him playing, which, like, a fucking nuff, my guy. But the whole area was known as Piper's Hole. Other stories about Piper's Hole said that a piper, a bagpiper, went into the hole, which was a sea cave, and got lost but never came back. And they didn't mention any mention of monsters. But I think that there's probably lots of Piper's Holes, insert sexual innuendo, all over the world. But anyway, back to the great worm. He is fucking forging his waterways ahead until he reaches Loch Ree. Now, when he gets there, he got into a battle with a tribe of serpents, and it lasted for about a month. They were fighting like day and night, like non-fucking stop. Now, I feel like it's very reasonable, but the villagers around are absolutely fucking terrified, right? Like, they're in the water fighting, so the waterways are like running, they're just red. Like, there's just blood everywhere. There's like dead serpents flying around. There's like debris flying like half a mile up into the air. It's a lot. It's a lot. So they're trying to stay out of the way. Most of the serpents died in the battle. They were losing. They were not doing well. So the remaining serpents are like, hello, Mr. Great Worm, my bad. Can we have peace? The Great Worm is like, I honestly just want to get to the fucking sea. Like, let me go. Great. Peace. The Great Worm, cool with peace, and is also like injured, bruised, bloody, wounded, and sleepy as fuck. So takes a little nap. And when he wakes up, rather than eating the livestock, he eats the serpent carcasses. So he cleans up after himself. Fantastic. But then he starts building his waterway again, and he gets hungry. So he starts eating the livestock again. Now, what's interesting is that at this point in the story, there's a distinct tone change about the livestock being eaten. Here, the way he phrases it is that they brought him like sacrificial almost, but like livestock is payment so that he could eat them because the waterway was beneficial to them. So they were like, if you'll do the hard work of making this waterway, like, here, have a goat, my guy. Okay.
Don't love it, but okay.
Don't love it, but like, at least it's not him just like snatching them up.
And drinking all their blood like we hear about lately, yeah?
Yeah. No chupacabra, baby. So the Great Worm, he is on his way to the fucking sea. So he makes his way to Loch Derg, where again, he's met with a bunch of fucking serpents that have beef with him. Now, when he was at Loch Ree, there were hundreds of serpents. But in Loch Derg, there are thousands of them.
He can't catch a break.
He cannot. He's like, I just want to get the fuck out of here. So this battle was even bloodier and scarier to the surrounding villages. But ultimately, the Great Worm won by raising his body up and then just kind of flopping down on the remaining serpents and mashing and crushing them up.
What a move.
What a move. Fucking icon. So the Great Worm is very wounded. He's now just like fought thousands of serpents, not too long after fighting hundreds of serpents. And he's in pain. But again, he eats the remains of the serpents rather than eating the local livestock. And he then continues building his waterway on his way to Limerick. So when he gets to Limerick, he encounters a group of heroes who are like, you are fucking done. If fucking enough. Like, your waterway ends here. And he's like, I just want to get to the fucking sea. And they're like, absolutely not. So then they fight, as they do. and they are seemingly victorious, beat the hell out of him. So they're like, okay, we're done. And they go back to their castle to sleep. But the worm was not dead. And so he attacked their castle where they slept and ate, quote, every mother's son of them.
Revenge.
I am going to interpret that as he ate the men.
Yeah.
But whatever. It was a beautiful turn of phrase, I guess. So the great worm was like, delicious heroes. And yet I continue back on the way to the fucking sea. So he continues on his way and he finally fucking gets there and he's like, ah, the sea. Great. And then there's a great fucking white whale beefing with him. It's like, fuck you, worm. Like, everybody just hates this fucking worm. So then a sea maiden emerges from the sea and kills the whale. And then they're like besties. They're just like traveling about, living their life in the sea together until they reach a village on the coast where there's lots of fishermen on boats. And it's near Bantry Bay. The great worm is like, oh, those look delicious. Slurps up the fishermen. Like, he's eating them whole. And the sea maiden is like, that's a shame. And the great worm presumably is like, what the fuck? Are you commentating on what I'm eating right now? Fucking rude. Attacks her. And she's like, abso-fucking-lutely not. I also will fight you, great worm. She stabs him in the eye with a golden comb until he's blinded. And he's like, I would rather fucking die. And then please stab me in the stomach with your magic scissors. And she's like, fucking will do. And she stabs him in the stomach. And the great worm is officially dead. His body kind of floats to the beach nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And when his body's there, the villagers just slice him on open. And there they find all of the, what did I call it? The sons of mothers or whatever. All the men are in his dead belly, just snoozing. They wake him up. They're fine. No worries. The great worm's remains were there for a good while until the locals basically just like took his bones and made oars out of them. The end.
Wait, worm bones?
Worm bones. And that's also a good point. Worm bones. Worms don't have bones that we know of.
Maybe it was a dragon, but it's hard to tell the difference.
Well, but I think that when you're thinking like big ass fucking worm, you would need to have some structure in there. So like when you're thinking earthworm, no. But like big old worm that's like burrowing.
Yeah. So let's move on to another story called Skolix. The original descriptions of the creature were found in ancient Greek writings. They said that the creature lived in the Indus River in Pakistan. It was a huge carnivorous white worm that had large teeth. Terrifying. Also, the Indus River is stunning. Like looking at pictures of it, it's very pretty.
It's very picturesque.
Mm-hmm. Gustav Oppert suggested that Skolix sounded similar to an Indian word for fish or porpoise. He suggested it could have even meant crocodile.
So like any creature in the water.
Right? I was like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So
anything but a fucking worm, he said.
Right. Eric Seldeslach suggested that it's more similar to the word meaning worm. The primary description of the creature is from Photius, a Byzantine scholar who discussed excerpts from writings by Ctesias Natus. And this is what he wrote.
In the river Indus, a worm is found resembling those which are usually found on fig trees. Its average length is 7 cubits, though some are longer, others shorter. It is so thick that a child 10 years old could hardly put his arms around it. It has 2 teeth, one in the upper and one in the lower jaw. Everything it seizes with these teeth it devours. By day it remains in the mud of the river, but at night it comes out, seizes whatever it comes across, whether ox or camel, drags it into the river, and devours it all except the intestines. It is caught with a large hook baited with a lamb or kid attached by iron chains. After it has been caught, it is hung up for 30 days with vessels placed underneath, into which as much oil from the body drips as would fill 10 Attic cotyle. At the end of the 30 days, the worm is thrown away. The vessels of oil are sealed or taken as a present to the King of India, who alone is allowed to use it. This oil sets everything alight, wood or animals, over which it is poured, and the flame can only be extinguished by throwing a quantity of thick mud on it.
So that's a story.
Boy, is it.
I have a few things. One, It's so thick that a child 10 years old could hardly put his arms around it. Like, is that the new unit of measurement of how wide something is?
Just in case you were wondering, the arm span of a 10-year-old boy is 55 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But like that, again, I think we stick with 12-year-old boys. It's a classic.
Yeah.
The arm span of a 12-year-old boy is 61 inches.
Okay.
Per the internet.
Perfect. So that's how we'll measure
Yeah.
how big something is. Okay.
Yeah, like could a 12-year-old boy wrap his arms around it?
Round, I guess. How big something is around.
Fucking weird.
Yeah.
I think what stuck out to me was how ineffective a tooth on the top, one tooth and one tooth on the bottom, like a tooth on the top and a tooth on the bottom. I'm imagining that the teeth are like large and flat, not like fangs, like a sexy tooth.
Okay.
Like they're more like molars,
Okay.
which is ridiculous to picture, but like it doesn't work. I'm putting my fingers together like that doesn't make sense. Like how would it do that?
Is that why it couldn't eat intestines?
I fucking guess. Like he was like, ew, that's gross. That's what you'll eat the butthole but not the intestine? Ridiculous. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Look, what an interesting creature.
Yeah. Weird.
When we saw this one, we were like, this is a very specific description. And unlike anything we've ever heard.
Weird worm cryptids.
I'm intrigued on how other people are viewing its teeth.
Yeah.
Which tooth do you think it is?
We need a diagram.
Mm-hmm.
It's just two back teeth. Like,
two back teeth just chomping.
yeah. Not even on the same side, though.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be easier to gum something than to top tooth, bottom tooth it.
I mean, if it was that big, I guess. Gross. So that wraps up our folklore discussion for today. So let's get more into the next part of today's episode.
One of our inspirations for today's episode was seeing people ask their significant others if they would still love them if they were a worm. If this is sounding insane to you and you've never heard it, it is a meme from 2019 from a user called Shut Your Hell. And what they did was they posted a conversation between themselves and their husband. Nowadays, people typically just ask the question, would you still love me if I was a worm? But this is where it comes from. So, Shut Your Hell at 3 a.m., crying. Husband, oh my God, what's wrong? Me, shaking. Nothing. Him, it's okay, just say it. Me, I don't know. I just feel like if we were born as worms, you wouldn't like me. Would you even marry me? Whatever, just forget it. So like, definitely, they're not asking him if they would still love them if they were a worm, and he was not a worm, but the question evolved to, would you still love me if I was a worm?
So random.
There's so many things to dive into. But first, like, why would you even ask somebody that? Like, why would you ask them, would you still love me if I was a worm? Amanda is like, ridiculous question. And I'm like, no, real question. Answer it, Benjamin. Like, need to know. So we're on different camps on this. I generally do think it's like validation or confirmation that your significant other loves you for like your intrinsic you and not just what you look like or the tangible benefits to your life. Because like,
but what benefit are you if you're a worm?
That's what I'm saying. That like your significant other could love you even if the tangible benefit wasn't there or that like you look different.
I would die in minutes.
Yeah, but there's like, if you're thinking of like what it might mean, I'm like,
I know.
There's so many situations where you could have a rapid change in your physical looks or your mental or physical abilities and being able to contribute financially. So it's like, do you love me even if there's not like something in it for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's what the question was, or why she asked it. I get it.
It's a less vulnerable way of asking that, I think.
It's just silly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let's go into this meme. Let's say your partner does become a worm. What do you do? We're going to give our answers in a moment. But first, here's some of what we saw around the internet. Use the worm lover as bait and go fishing. Seems very mean.
Mm-hmm.
And bad luck. Another one is they would put them into a very nice box in the closet and make a terrarium and or under the sink, right? Some say that they would cut their significant other into pieces so they'd have more of them, which we talked about might not always work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Also, like, I love Ben. I don't want many Bens.
No.
Like, one is the right amount.
Some said flat out that they just wouldn't love their significant other anymore. And one said, quote, to be honest, I would still love my crush, even if she was a worm. She will be a cute worm, the best of the best.
Cute. cute.
Okay.
I asked my husband this, and he was like, I would build you a nice habitat and get you some worm friends. And he was like very proud of this answer. He was like, I would give you a good life, like a good little worm life. I'd build you a habitat. I'd get you friends. And that is fine. But I do feel like my immediate question is, how the fuck did I become a worm? And I would hope that if I became a worm, that he would be like, well, how did this happen? Like, how do I fix this? Because it makes me a little bit nervous that, like, if I turned into a different creature, he wouldn't do any problem solving. Like, that wasn't, he was like,
He'd be like, this is what it is.
now that I've, like, perhaps suggested the idea, maybe I think he would. But, like, I found it alarming that he was just like, you're a worm, nothing I can do. And I'm like, oh no, I want to empower you to be able to do more than just put me in a box and get me worm friends to hang out with.
Well, I asked my husband this, and his was much different. His answer was no, because I wouldn't have a brain and I would die soon. He also added, quote, sorry, wizard, or whoever I pissed off. We had a good run, though.
Now, I do think that you should point out to him that some worms live for 300 years, so maybe you would outlive him.
Yeah, I guess. He doesn't know worm science.
Yeah. I'll never know worm science.
But yeah, I mean, he acknowledged that something turned me into it. But again, like Ben, he didn't care why or how. He was just like, good run, good luck. And, you know, I'd probably just die in the sun 3 seconds in. So
He would have to move if he wanted to care for you properly. And
that would be a lot of work for him. He wouldn't.
that's a lot of work. So, okay. If you are inclined to keep your lover turned worm in a habitat, here's how you would build it. For your standard garden worm, you would grab a bin or a jar, then you would add 1 layer of shredded newspaper, then spray it with water, then add 1 layer of dirt, and then you would continue layering back and forth until the container is like full-ish. And then you add your worm or worms,
if you have worm friends.
if you have worm friends. Now, if you happen to be that giant tube worm that we mentioned earlier, you would need to figure out how to build your worm lover a habitat that mimicked their natural habitat, which is the ocean floor near hot springs or other hydrothermal vents.
Seems easy.
And they would need to have hot, mineral-rich water flowing, which that's a whole other like set of problems. I think you then are just like, we've had a good run, as Mike would say.
Yeah, we've had a good run. I'm ready to die. It's fine. So we should probably also consider how your significant other became a worm, and or why, perhaps. To be honest, there's only 2 ways we can imagine a person turning into a worm. They were either a shapeshifter, or if you had someone hex, curse, or put a spell on you. I can't think of any others. If you can, let us know.
Yeah, we'll help you problem solve. We want to know the other ways in which someone could turn into a worm, but these feel like the top 2.
Outside of being dead and turning into...
Oh, being worm food, though. Okay.
Yeah. So, spellsofmagic.com has casting instructions for, quote, transform into a worm. So, don't do this if you don't want to be a worm. Take 4 leaves from a tree outside and place them in a cup. Get some hot water and pour it on the mug with the leaves inside. High temperature water is liked, but cool water will do fine and dandy. Then get some dirt or soil and put it into the cup. When you've done that, say the serenade.
Enchantment of the firmament fair, make me such a worm to care. Let me devour earth and run, the same number of animals live by sun. Spellsofmagic.com also lists a couple of side effects. You might feel squirmy, and you might crave dirt.
Okay.
They also note that you shouldn't eat dirt unless you are a worm.
Okay.
And that you might shrink at will.
Fair.
In terms of like spell versions of this, Amanda and I don't know enough about magic to be able to tell anybody how to turn into a worm, so we're relying on other sources, you know? But we did find a fairy tale titled The Laidly Worm of Spindleston Heugh, which is about a princess named Margaret who was turned into a worm by her jealous stepmother, who was a witch. Now, good news, she was eventually unwormed and rehumaned, but we don't love the way it happened because
no,
she had to convince her brother to kiss her 3 times. So I guess another solution we could just throw into the mix here is 3, I'm going to say chaste kisses from a sibling, like on a worm cheek or something. Not a Sleeping Beauty kiss, if you will.
Yeah, hope so. Although old stories we have found have been...
Incestuous themes were more prevalent then.
Yeah.
Now, if for the shapeshifting bit, one would imagine that if a person was a shapeshifter, they turned into a worm because they meant to, and they could turn back to a human at will. But, I mean, look, we're trying to problem solve for all situations here. So if they didn't mean to turn into a worm, like they just like, this is the first time they've ever like shifted, and they're like, fuck, this person doesn't know how to unworm themselves. You're going to have to find another shapeshifter to teach them how to shift. We have no clue how to do that.
That could be tricky.
Does the dark web have that? Who could say? I don't know. Do they have a Reddit? I don't know. I feel like you're going to get a lot of people who are doing sex things in werewolf costumes. I think that's what you're going to find. But anyway, another option would be to just like show some movies where characters learn to shapeshift. Just a few that we could think of were Teen Wolf, True Blood, Animorphs. The next one is going to surprise you, and it's a good one. The Secret World of Alex Mack, because she becomes that silver slime goo. Or if you're thinking of training to shift into another energy on demand, we could even put in the Incredible Hulk or She-Hulk as shifting inspiration, shifting inspo, as the kids say, I think.
Yeah, you know their lingo. So the next step, let's figure out how to unworm your significant other if they became worm by a spell.
That's the very unsettling phrasing that I kept asking Ben. Like I said, I kept asking, if I became worm, like not a worm, if I became worm.
And as Lindsay said it, neither of us know enough about witchcraft to be able to tell you this, so we asked the internet. Per WikiHow, so super duper believable, here's how you remove a spell. Wear an amulet to lessen the effects of the curse. This does not seem applicable here because we don't think that worms could wear necklaces. Take a bath in salt and magic herbs and think positive thoughts, which I don't think that would work either. As a fun fact, worms can survive underwater for a couple of weeks, like we said. However, many worms are sensitive to salt, so a salt bath could be lethal. So maybe forgo the salt in the bath. WikiHow suggests the following to boost the bath's cleansing power: basil, mugwort, patchouli, wormwood. Many of these herbs are useful for expelling worms from the digestive tract, so maybe it would be promising and or lethal. Another option is to burn, quote, uncrossing incense. Again, you could use things like mugwort or wormwood for this. Also, using positive energy by laughing or thinking good thoughts. Again, I don't know if you could do that as a worm. You could try a spellbinding spell that turns evil to good, and or talk to a spiritual healer, which would be hard to do as a worm, but hopefully someone, your advocate, could.
Well, the idea is that your significant other is doing this, right? Like they're the ones problem solving, theoretically, hopefully.
Ours would move on.
I think now that I've given a guide, I think I'm more optimistic.
They don't listen to this though, so they'd have no idea.
Oh no, I'm going to provide this information to him.
Oh, okay.
In case of worm.
In case of worm, okay. Other solutions we found for breaking a curse or hex is creating a magic mirror. This will bounce a hex or curse back to the sender. Not sure if this would work in situations where a person has already become the worm, though. So maybe if you've pissed someone off, do that before they turn you into a worm.
Make a magic mirror now. Yeah.
Generally, spiritual cleansing. Per Erica Matlock, a neuropathic doctor and Reiki master, spiritual cleansing is an intentional cleansing of the energetic field. Per Nate Martinez, a sound therapy practitioner, by using rhythm and frequency, we can entrain our brainwaves. As a note, beta is normal waking consciousness, alpha is relaxed consciousness, theta is meditative state, and delta is sleep, where internal healing can occur. Entrainment is a phenomenon whereby sound provides a stable frequency for our brainwaves to attach to. It then becomes possible to downshift to our normal beta state to alpha, and then reach theta and delta.
It's interesting, the idea that you could change based on a sound wave and then move through these different states. I would be interested in the shapeshifter theory. That might be helpful in that. But anyway, okay, we've problem solved as much as we can. But there are some other practical considerations just to consider. How do you know that the worm, presumably in your house, is your significant other?
Right.
In my hypothetical to Ben, I said the worm had my tattoos, which I find very funny. But in my brain, your significant other had to see you go from human to worm.
Right.
They had to witness it. And that seems terrifying. Like, this is its own brand of trauma. But Amanda, I need to know, which of these do you think would be worse to see? Or do you think would happen?
Okay.
That the person would be human, then get little, then lose their limbs and become worm.
Mm-hmm.
Or when they are human-sized, they would lose their limbs, transform to worm, and then get little.
I think the second one is more trauma.
I think so too, because there's more to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be easier to not be like, oh, I've just lost my mind, if I saw it happen big.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd be like, maybe I was confused. Maybe that didn't happen. You know, like, surely that tiny little thing that just happened isn't what happened, versus like the big version, there's human-sized limbs on the ground.
They just fall off.
I don't know. Maybe they shrink into you. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say shrink into you.
Yeah, that's fair. Unless you are at a very public place with lots of people you know who are witnessing it, the other people in your life, they aren't going to know that you turned into a worm.
No.
And if your significant other is like, oh, hey, Lindsay's a worm now, we'll be like, oh, he's saying he killed her.
Oh, for sure.
That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
No one's going to believe that.
So you need to get it on video.
I guess, yeah. But like, presuming you don't have video, you would likely become a missing person.
Mm-hmm.
From the many true crime cases we've covered, we do know a good about missing persons cases. First off, not all states require you to report a person as missing when they disappear. And there are no federal laws that require someone to report a missing person. So theoretically, you could opt to not report your worm lover as a missing person, but it seems like you would seem more guilty later if your significant other disappeared and then you didn't report them missing. It would seem suspicious. And if you were the only person who knows the person is a worm in their beautifully made terrarium, then you need your worm advocate, as Amanda called them earlier, to like stay free in the world.
Yeah.
We need you to figure out and unworm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about those states real quick. Per a 2020 report on how to investigate missing persons, these are the states that do not legally require you to report an adult as missing, which isn't great.
No, I don't love that.
But before we read the list, the term adult varies jurisdictionally. The age of adulthood in regards to a missing person seems to range from 17 to 21. So here are the states: Arizona, DC, Georgia, Hawaii, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Wyoming.
That's too many states.
That is too many states. That sucks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
From what we've seen in other cases, when a person goes missing and law enforcement is effective, when that happens, they will look at everything they can to get a sense of where the person was last. So things like banking records, security footage or ring cams, recent purchases, communication records, location records found through cell data, internet search history. So always be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
Ours looks like we murder people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They also may search these things for anyone who they think was involved with a person disappearing. So if you start to Google, quote, how to unworm my partner after they go missing, then police will likely be very suspicious.
You got a game plan now, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to look now.
I'd also point out that like all of those things that we were talking about, like, if you were in your own home,
Mm-hmm.
they would point to you being home when you disappeared,
Yeah.
which is not good. It's not good for your partner.
It's funny that a little meme turned into this.
I know. More than you ever wanted to know. Maybe you did want to know. Maybe you needed someone to tell you all the things. So now, given all of the information that we know, would you still love your significant other if they were a worm? And what would you do if they turned into a worm? We have done our best to come up with the best answer to this question. So first off, yes, of course I would still love you. And then you say, let me tell you about what I'm going to do. I'm going to build you a gorgeous habitat because you got to get them someplace moist very quick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Take a moment to process watching my significant other turn into a fucking worm. That's very valid. You would need that. Then you're going to determine whether the person shapeshifted or was cursed. If you're a shapeshifter, you're going to have a TV marathon to figure out how to unfucking shapeshift. At the same time, though, you're going to go to work removing the curse because you don't know if it's a shapeshifter or a curse. You've got to try the try and true kiss them first. I mean, grab a sibling, have them kiss them too. Just for, I don't know how you're going to convince them, but you have to do that. It's part of it. Then you don't know which end is the tail or the mouth, so you will have to kiss both ends.
Oh gosh.
Because presumably it has to be a kiss on the lips if it's a love thing. So, then you're going to give them a bath with magical herbs.
Not salt.
And have some herbs burning in the bathroom during the bath, just in case. But check to see which ones are for deworming and don't include those herbs. Then you're kind of trying to lift the mood. Try to get your worm lover in a good mood, because it is possible that maybe the worm has the consciousness of your person still. So you're going to crack some jokes. You're going to try to get them thinking positive things. I don't think it's going to work, but you should still try. You're going to try just a whole bunch of versions of spiritual cleansing to see if any of them stick. I'm partial to sound cleansing, so I'm going to make a sweet playlist. That's also going to win you so many love points from your person. Then, after a few hours, I would report the person missing, but I have no clue what I would say to law enforcement because I wouldn't want to waste resources, but I also wouldn't want to be suspected for murder.
Fair.
So, I think that's the best answer.
I think so. You hit everything.
Yeah.
Right? That's all we know.
Yeah, I think so.
So after listening to this, do you feel like a worm scientist? Or like you're more prepared to answer your significant other if they ask you if you'd still love them if they became a worm and what you would do? I hope so. If you answer your partner with deeds from today's episode, please tell us. Even if it's 7 years from now, because we do want to know. Always.
We always do.
You might hear my dogs playing in the background. They've been calm for too long.
Fair.
Also, let us know if you have any other burning questions that you need help answering. Clearly, we're scientists of everything.
Yeah, we can figure it out.
And if you've been loving the show, please leave us a review on Apple iTunes. If you do, we would love to send you a sticker as a thank you. And coming up in October, it's very soon, it is our podiversary. And on our podiversary, we like to include listener stories. So if you'd like to be included, submit your story via share your story on our website, truecreeps.com. It can be recorded or written, and you'll get a special sticker that we're only sending out to the people who share their stories this year. So lots of ways to get True Creep stickers.
We're excited about the episode.
Yes, we've already gotten a few submissions and they're great.
I feel like we've told you enough about worms. So with that, have a great weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us.
Thanks for listening. And as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you. If the like we said, the lady, the worms were now blah, 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 blah.
Speaking of folklore, let's get into a couple worm folklore.
Oh no, she said folklore once, and now that's where we are.
Folklore.